Hey there, welcome back to another regular Guy Vikings Hour. Thanks so much for joining me. So in this episode, which I believe is episode either like 19 or 20 for me, if you don't count my intro and like the highlight package video that I did, I think this might be 19. So anyway, what we're gonna do on this episode is we're gonna go through quite a few things. I've actually got a really packed show for you. It's got a lot of good stuff. So we're gonna start off by doing some predictions for McCarthy and the offense. We're going to take a look at the depth chart, do some roster projections, take a look at some interesting free agents that are still available. Talk about Hawkinson a little bit and what his role in the offense will be this year. I'm going to do a deep dive on the special teams. I did a mock draft about 3 weeks ago. It's my 1.0, and we're going to kind of go through that and take a look at what I did and where that fits into the team as it's currently constructed. Take a look at some trade partners that we could be interested in if we're looking to trade down. Interesting undrafted free agents we could look at, and the schedule, and then some final thoughts. So anyway, let's get into it. We're going to start you off by bringing you over to the spreadsheet, and we'll get rolling on this. Okay, so here's my spreadsheet. On my very first tab here, I have got my 2025 JJ McCarthy / Vikings offense official prediction. So I'm literally like saying these are official predictions by me for our McCarthy and our offense going into 2025. And first of all, I want to look at the 2024 stats, because I think a lot of us knew as we watched the 2024 Vikings offense that there was a lot of explosiveness there, and by and large, in terms of yardage and points, they were pretty good. I think in terms of yardage and points, they ranked somewhere around the top 10 or a little bit higher. And so if you just look at those surface stats, you think to yourself, that's a really, really good year. And I'm not saying they didn't have a good year, but then when you do a little bit deeper dive on the offense and you kind of dig into some of these more intricate stats, you kind of understand where there were some failings with this offense. So right off the bat, if you look at our offense's overall yards per play, we came in at 5.6 yards per play, which was the 11th best in the league, so not quite top 10. This one's actually a McCarthy-specific stat, so I added up all of Darnold's first downs. Every first down that Sam Darnold was that he himself created, either by throwing or by running, he came out with 230 first downs on his own, which is actually really good. I mean, that's like, I think a little bit shy of like 15 first downs a game. So really good showing, but I think McCarthy can do better. Sacks taken, 48, which was the 9th most. Okay, so that's top 10 in a bad way. And we saw that really rear its ugly head at the end of the year, right? Scoring percentage, 41.4% of the time we scored at the end of a drive, which was 13th best in the league. Time that the offense held on to the ball per drive, 2 minutes and 43 seconds. 22nd best in the NFL, which is not good. Number of plays per drive, 5.74. 26th best in the league. I mean, that's nearly bottom 5. That's really bad. So it was either we were getting big explosive plays or we weren't sustaining drives. And I get it. The running game had a lot to do with that. And although it wasn't horrible, it was pretty, average. The offensive line, clearly, after Darisaw went out, had a lot to do with that. I'm not saying it's all on Sam's shoulders. I'm just saying it wasn't as good as maybe originally perceived. How about points per drive? 2.16, a little bit better here, 12th most in the league, not quite top 10. How about third down conversion percentage? 40%, 12th best in the league. Fourth down conversion percentage was only 46.2%, 27th most in the league, which that is bottom 5 or like bottom 6. And then finally, red zone touchdown percentage, which came in at 55.7%, which was 19th best in the league. Again, a little bit below average. So here are 10 statistical categories for our offense, or for JJ McCarthy, that I am officially saying I think that in 2025 the Vikings will improve on all of these numbers. So here I just kind of state yards per play 5.6. I think we go higher than that. Quarterback first downs total, both throwing and running, I say that McCarthy gets more than the 230. Sacks taken, I say that McCarthy takes fewer than 48 sacks. And then for the rest of them, I'm saying higher. score percentage, time per drive, plays per drive, points per drive, third down percentage, third down conversion percentage, fourth down conversion percentage, and red zone touchdown percentage. I'm saying McCarthy will run this offense more efficiently, and he will rank higher in all of those categories. So obviously for right now, we see that, 2025's ranking is still blank because it hasn't happened yet. And I'm very excited to come back at the end of the year and put in all these numbers and see where we landed on this. So I'm expecting him to get 10 out of 10, but if he gets 7 out of 10 or 8 out of 10, I would consider that a pretty huge success. So just as you know from past videos and the clips that I put out there, I'm a big believer in JJ McCarthy. I think that he is going to hit the ground running, and he's going to run this offense really well and really efficiently, and I think that the offense is going to improve because of it. Okay, so that is the first item. So let's go on to the roster. This is kind of like my makeshift depth chart and then just kind of some roster projections that I'm looking at. So if we just start here on the quarterbacks, clearly you have JJ McCarthy as your number one. There's obviously an expectation that we will be signing a veteran free agent quarterback. And just there's really only two names left on this list right now, and that's Ryan Tannehill or Carson Wentz. Before I had four names on this. I had Joe Flacco and I had Drew Lock as well, but clearly those two guys have signed with other teams in just the last couple of days. So now we're down to two. And honestly, it's not really something that I'm worried about, because as long as there's one name on this list, you can still get one of these veteran guys. And if the Vikings decide to just roll with, McCarthy and Rippon and maybe a rookie or something, it's like, so be it. It's not the end of the world. So there you go. Your QB2, still looking for a veteran free agency ad assumed. Brett Rippon obviously would be the QB3. I've got him in orange because he would not be a game day active. He would be your emergency quarterback 3, which counts as your 49th guy in your game day actives. All right, then we're looking at running backs. Obviously, you've got Aaron Jones, number 1. You've got Jordan Mason, number 2. But they're more of a 1A and a 1B. Then for me, and again, this is what I'm considering to be a roster projection, where I'm projecting forward the roster based on free agency additions that we could potentially make. And then I threw in my mock draft 1.0 into this projection. So that's kind of like where you're going to see some of this stuff. So the drafted running back that I have projected right now is Travion Henderson out of Ohio State. So that's where he would fit in. And then, of course, you have CJ Ham, the fullback, who completes the four backs, as it were. Okay, so then you move on to wide receiver. Of course, you have Jefferson, you have Addison, you have Naylor, your top 3. I'm going to go ahead and pencil in Rondale Moore as your 4, and then Tim Jones, the kind of special teams specialist, as your 5. Now, here's where it gets interesting. Right now, I just have 6th wide receiver, and I don't really know if that's going to be a draftee or if that's going to be a free agent addition, or maybe even a guy from the practice squad, like a Lucky Jackson or a Thayer Thomas. I'm not sure. I doubt that they would roll into the season with that kind of a 6, but you never know. I mean, maybe they have a lot of faith in those guys. So a couple of guys that I had on my radar, just looking right here, I think based on the amount of money we still have left in terms of cap space, which again is around $20 million, I think in addition to signing a veteran free agent quarterback, I think we're also going to sign maybe like one more big name free agent, which I think will end up, I think you'll see the average annual value of that signing come in somewhere around 10 million, somewhere in that range, maybe anywhere from like 8 to 12, right? Obviously the cap hit won't be that much. It'll be more like 4, 5, 6, 7, who knows? But look for, I think, one more veteran big name free agency addition. I think it could be at receiver. I also think it could be at cornerback, because I know that the Asante Samuel rumors are out there. I mean, it's not really a rumor so much as it's more of like a smoldering ember, with just the faintest amount of smoke. There's been a little bit of talk about it from certain places, such as Purple Daily and their anonymous tip line. But so I've got him on the list. But I think it's, at least right now, looking a little bit more likely, like we might go after a guy like an Amari Cooper or a Tyler Lockett to help fill out that wide receiver room. So we'll find out. We don't know yet. Another handful of guys I have kind of on the list, because I think we're looking for a guy who maybe kind of plays the slot a little bit more, maybe even a big slot. So maybe a guy like a Nelson Aguilar or a DJ Chark or even a Chris Conley, who's kind of a journeyman guy, but he would help fill out the the 6-man receiver room. So there's my thoughts on that. I don't really know where to place them at the moment, so I just have them in a 6th receiver until we really know more. So obviously, once the draft happens and then they sign a couple more guys to help fill out the roster, we're going to know a lot more at that point. So for now, I just have it as a 6th receiver, and I have it as a guy who wouldn't be starting on game days, but potentially if they did go out and get a big name, kind of a guy like an Amari Cooper or a Lockett, then you would see a guy like a Tim Jones probably not get onto the field on game days. Okay, so moving on to tight end, and I do have a note here about TJ Hawkinson, and that's this. Hawkinson is our number 2 receiver. When he played with Kirk Cousins in 18 games with Kirk, Hawk had 100. Okay, yeah, so this is total in the 18 games. It was 113 catches, 997 yards, and 6 touchdowns. And he caught the ball 54 times for first downs. Now, I reduced it down just a little bit percentage-wise to say, okay, what would it come out to as a 17-game season? And that would be 106 catches, 938 yards, 6 touchdowns, and 51 first down catches, okay? With Sam Darnold in 10 games, and obviously I had to extrapolate that number to make it into a 17-game number. He only had, actually I don't have the original number, but I extrapolated it out to the 17 games. What Hawkinson's season would have looked like with Sam Darnold was 70 catches, 774 yards, no touchdowns, but 51 first downs, so the same number of first downs. But he didn't utilize him in the end zone at all, and he basically used Hawkinson at about 70% capacity. And I think that that's going to completely change when McCarthy takes over this team. I think that McCarthy turns Hawkinson into our number 2 receiver. And here's another prediction I'm willing to put out there. I think that Hawkinson goes for 100 receptions, 1,000 yards, and 10 touchdowns, and I guess you could say 60 first down receptions in his first year with J.J. McCarthy. He's going to turn him back into a Pro Bowler, if not an all-pro tight end, okay? And play like the guy that we paid for, because he is that talented. He is that special. We just need to utilize him. Sam didn't utilize him. He was constantly looking down the field, and I'm not saying he would never take the check down, but man, those little, pump fakes and things that he did, I felt like a lot of times he was looking at Hawkinson. He had him. And even if it's only like a 6-7 yard gain, throw the ball to Hawk, get those yards. Instead, he would run or take a sack or run around a little bit and end up throwing a long pass. But I just think McCarthy utilizes Hawkinson, and I think he turns Hawkinson back into a potential all-pro player. So look for Hawkinson in terms of statistics and just number of targets and importance in the offense. Look for Hawkinson to be the number 2 receiver in the Vikings offense. Okay, moving on now throughout the tight end depth chart here. Obviously, you have Josh Oliver as your number 2. And then I have listed here at 3 as a drafted tight end, and the guy that I'm targeting personally is a guy named Gunnar Helm out of Texas. And again, we're going to get to all the draftees later. Okay, so next up we have tackles. Clearly you have Darisaw, you have O'Neal, and you have Justin SKOL. It'd be nice if his name was pronounced SKOL, but I believe it's SKOL. And to everyone's knowledge, I believe when they talk to O'Connell at the owners' meetings, the only guy that O'Connell thinks really won't be ready for training camp and off-season programs is Rondale Moore, who's still coming back from a pretty badly injured knee. Darisaw, I think, is going to be ready. So I don't think there's a lot of concerns there. So I think Darisaw will probably start the year, and he should be fine. Maybe he starts out a little bit slow because, he's probably going to probably not play any in the preseason, so he's going to come out a little bit rusty, but I think he'll kick it into gear pretty quick. He's a talented player. All right, next up we have our inside offensive line, or IOL. I've got 6 guys, and that is Ryan Kelly at center, right? Will Fries at right guard, Blake Brandel for now at left guard. We'll see if he gets some competition there. And then I have a veteran free agency addition for the inside offensive line, and I handpicked a few guys that I think are interesting. So right here, so the number 1 guy that I've been looking at since even before free agency started, he was kind of like my guy that I was like, we should really look into this guy and bring him in, is Tristan Colon Castillo, who played with the Cardinals before. Now he's going to be going into his 6th season. He's already like 27 years old. And so he didn't really have a lot of starting experience prior to this last year, but he actually got 400 snaps with the Cardinals last year and played, I think, at like a 71 PFF grade. And so he has versatility throughout the line. I think he can play both guard spots and center. So this is a guy I am really keeping an eye on. To my knowledge, he still hasn't been signed anywhere, and I really, really hope that Kwesi has an eye on him because I'd love to see this guy come in. I think he would really add significant depth to the inside of our line. And just another few veteran names that I'm keeping an eye on, like Nick Gates, who was with the Commanders last year. Max Sharping, I don't even know who he played for last year, but he's a guy I think who can play both guard spots, maybe a little bit of center. Sam Mustafer, I guess if we're getting desperate. And then, of course, we could always bring back Dan Feeney, who we know we didn't even really see him last year. But we did see him in some preseason games. He was okay. He can play guard and center. So if all else fails, we can bring in Dan and to fill out the inside line. So then beyond that, you have Walter Rouse, who it sounds like is being kicked in from tackle into guard. So he can provide some depth at guard. And then, of course, you have Michael Juergens, who is kind of projected as your future center. Now, I have Juergens listed as maybe the guy who wouldn't be activated on game days, and it was actually reversed. Last year, you saw Rouse being the inactive and Juergens actually being the active guy, and I think that was because we didn't really have a trustworthy center beyond Bradbury. So, and I think the Juergens can also play guard. So he was just a little bit more versatile, whereas Rouse, I think, was still kind of learning guard and was kind of more of a tackle, prospect more so last year. And of course, we had Questenberry as our backup swing tackle. So that would explain why those guys were flip-flop last year. But I think this year, with Kelly kind of being the man, and then once you bring in that veteran and you have a guy who can back up at center, I think maybe Juergens would be the odd man out in terms of game day actives. Okay. So we talked about QBs, we talked about receivers, we talked about Hawk, we just talked about the inside offensive line. Let's get to the defense. Okay, your interior defensive line here. You have Harrison Phillips right now who projects at your nose tackle, and you have Hargrave and Allen playing next to him. I believe that Allen, just based on what I saw of him, most likely will be your right defensive end, and I think Hargrave will be your left, because I noticed that Allen almost predominantly played it right, whereas Hargrave would go back and forth and play both spots. So I think that Hargrave's a little bit more versatile in that regard. Your backup nose is going to be Taki Taimani. He's definitely an important part of this defensive line right now, because when it comes time for goal line situations or short yardage situations, he's really the only guy among this group who is capable of taking on two blocks and holding ground. So you got to have him in the game for those situations. And then it's kind of a dealer's choice between Jalen Redmond and Levi Drake Rodriguez right now. Obviously, with what Redmond showed last year, you have to give him the nod over LDR at this moment. It depends on what LDR shows us in the offseason and in preseason. Maybe he passes Redmond. But as of right now, when having to choose between the two, because you would have five guys active, I would probably go with Redmond over LDR, and he'd be the guy who would be inactive. And again, these are all early projections, but again, I like doing deep dive on this stuff because I like kind of giving you a little bit different content than most people would give you. And so this is the kind of stuff that, a lot of other Vikings voices aren't talking about. So I want to give you that here. Okay, so then you got your edge room, which is basically unchanged from last year. You got Grenard, you got Van Ginkel, you got Dallas Turner, who I expect to make a major leap this year. Really what I'm looking for from Dallas Turner, I noticed he was a major liability in the run defense last year. And so he needs to get, he needs to pack on some more pounds, some more muscle, and get stronger so that he can hold his ground at the point of attack when he gets run at, because he was a major liability in the run game last year. Then you have Gabriel Murphy, which I think is a guy that they'd still like a lot, even though he missed a majority of the year. Really didn't get on the field a lot. I think he's a guy that is still projected to be in the rotation and a guy that they plan to play quite a bit this year. So look for Murphy to definitely be more of a well-known name this year as opposed to last year where you really didn't hear much from him. And then Bo Richter, who basically is becoming one of our core four special teams aces. He was amazing on special teams last year, and I think that easily gets him a position on the 53-man roster and easily gets him active on game days. Okay, then we'll go down to inside linebacker, off-ball linebacker. You have Pace, you have Cashman, you have Eric Wilson, another core four special teamer that we brought in to replace Kamu Grugier-Hill. And then I have us drafting an interior linebacker, and I have this guy beating out Brian Asamoah for a roster spot. Now, I will say this. Right now, when I go into my special teams projections, I do have Asamoah as one of our core four special teamers because I don't really have anything to go off of from a rookie because I don't know who that would be. But I really do expect us to draft a rookie inside linebacker, probably within the first 4 rounds to compete with Asamoah. And as it stands now, even though Asamoah had a pretty decent year on special teams, he really is a huge liability when he's on the field on defense, and I don't think they really have any plans of playing him whatsoever. So I think if a rookie comes in and he shows that he can be on the field in if they really need him and then can also play special teams at a pretty decent level, then I think he probably gets the nod over Asamoah. All right, so then you have our safety room, which is 4 guys. You've got Harrison Smith, Josh Metellus, Theo Jackson, and then a newfound, again, another 4-core special teamer, Tavier Thomas, and he is probably the best out of all of them. He had, again, I can't wait to show you the special team spreadsheet that I've created because his grades are amazing. He look out for this guy to make a name for himself on special teams this year. Okay, then you've got your cornerback room, which is Byron Murphy, Mekhi Blackman, Isaiah Rogers. I've got Dwight McGlothern, although you see him in orange there, he would be a game day inactive because Najee Thompson, again, another special teams ace, he fills out this cornerback room. He's a guy who does not play on the field. I think maybe he got 1 snap as a corner, probably in some kind of emergency injury situation his rookie year. He doesn't play corner. He's a special teamer, but he's a great special teamer, and that's why you keep him on the roster. So that's why Najee makes the 53. That's why Najee is active on game days because, again, another special teams ace. And this is something I talked about in my last video. Kwesi and the staff and everyone involved, they are really making it a point to emphasize special teams this year and make them great. And I'm loving that because if you look at how the Lions played last year, right? How did they blow teams out? It wasn't just that they had a great offense, which they did, and I get that. The defense wasn't great. I mean, early in the year with Hutchinson it was, but later in the year, they were still blowing teams out. And you're like, well, how did they do that? I mean, if you look back, I think it was the Tennessee game where they were just getting these like long kick returns and like blocking punts and just doing all these things. When you want to go from a team that's playing close games and you want to turn into that Lions-esque team and you start blowing teams away by 3 scores or more, it's because of your special teams. Your special teams put you into that elite group when you just start just blowing your opponents away. So when you bring in all of these players, it makes the special teams outlook very, very good, and I can't wait to see. And I think there's a chance that this team could be handing out some blowouts this year because of the special teams. Okay, so I talked about McGlothern and Thompson. So then the 6th guy in the cornerback room, in my opinion, will be another draftee. Again, that would not be the case if they did say after the draft go out and sign a guy like an Asante Samuel, which I get is a high possibility. But for my roster projection and what I'm doing here on this spreadsheet and the draft that I had, I actually I went ahead and just drafted a cornerback really high, and so that's who's going to make up the 6th guy on in the cornerback room there. Okay, so let's actually go take a look at the special teams now. I've been talking about it. I've already. Okay, well, I can talk about the. Let's see, where do I have practice squad? I don't have practice squad. Let's talk about the practice squad real quick, just to kind of. Oh, and I didn't do special teams. My bad. Getting ahead of myself here. Let me get a little drink real quick. How far are we in here? About 23 minutes. All right. You got your kicker, Will Reichard, who, despite missing the 4 games with the, I think it was a hamstring or something like that, I don't expect that to continue. I think he'll be healthy. And if there's the one thing I really appreciated about Reichard and what he showed last year was that he didn't have like mental stuff. He had issues with his leg, which caused him it probably screwed with his mechanics and things like that. But mentally, he was good all the way through the year. And every time he kicks, it's like a laser beam straight through. You don't see a lot of like really crazy hooks and fades and stuff with his kicks. So I've got a lot of faith in Will Reichard. I think he's going to be a really great kicker for us. And that's going to end up being, I think, it's going to end up being a draft pick from the 2024 class, including McCarthy and Turner, that ends up being a real win for Kwesi. And I think people are going to look back on that 2024 class and think, even though it was super small, and we'll see, how Rouse and Juergens and guys like that pan out. But there were some pretty good undrafted free agents that came out of that. I mean, who are we looking at? In Levi Drake Rodriguez, right? That was another 7th rounder. But I mean, you talk about McGlothern, you talk about Murphy, you talk about Taimani. that 2024 class, when you combine the draft picks and the undrafted guys, that could look really, really special in a few years. So I'm looking forward to seeing what Will Reichard can give us this year. Okay, this one's interesting. So I'll just say long snapper, obviously it's on Andrew DePaula. He's an all-pro. We're set there for a while. At punter, so right now it is Ryan Wright, but I got to tell you, I was defending the hell out of him last year, and by the end of the year, I kind of just came to the realization that he's just an average, mediocre punter. And don't get me wrong, he's given us 3 solid years of punting. He came in as an undrafted free agent from that 2022 class, which, is kind of like one of the minor highlights of that draft class. Again, when you throw in the UDFAs. But I think it's time to move on from Ryan Wright. So we signed him back for I think a vet minimum deal. He needs some competition. And the guy that I have coming in to compete with him is none other than, I believe the guy's name is Burnip. He was the punter from Alabama last year, which I find really interesting, right? Because that means that Reichard and Burnip know each other and work together at Alabama. So I think it would be just really serendipitous if we drafted the Alabama kicker one year and then went and drafted, or maybe even picked him up in the undrafted free agency period, picked up the Alabama punter the very next year, then they continue to work together for years to come. So that's, regardless of which guy it is, though, whether it's Burnip or somebody else, I think that Ryan Wright is going to get some stiff competition, and I think if he's going to keep this punting job, he's going to have to earn it. As it stands right now, I think that whoever we draft or bring in is going to beat him out for the job. That's my own personal opinion. Okay, so then just now that I have talked about special teams, I'll get to the practice squad. Guys who I think are going to be on the practice squad, I think that Ty Chandler will definitely be on the practice squad, because you're allowed to keep up to 6 veterans on your practice squad, which means that they have had 2 years of service in the NFL or more. So guys like Chandler or Okudah, they're going to qualify for that. And I don't think that I went over, but I think Ty Chandler will be on the practice squad. I think he'll get beat out by the rookie running back we bring in. I think Jeff Okudah will be on the practice squad because, again, that's a guy I don't think anyone's looking to pick up. I mean, hey, if somebody swipes Jeff Okudah off our practice squad and adds him to their 53, fine. It's not a big loss. But I think McLaurin beats him out. And then I have some notes here about some guys that I think we're going to sign or re-sign to help fill out the practice squad. So I think that a guy like Jihad Ward would be a really important re-addition, because I really liked what he showed last year. He had a lot of spunk, and he showed a lot of energy, and he was able to move all around. He could play end, he could play at the nose on like third downs, he could play off the edge. He's got a lot of versatility. He's been in the scheme 1 year. He showed a lot, in my opinion. I thought, there were times when Jihad was making some pretty big plays for us. And so that's a guy, again, bring him in, put him onto the practice squad. He's a guy you can call up on game days when you need him. And then, eventually the season starts, you're a few games in, because you get like 3 call-ups, I believe, before you're out, and you got to add him to the 53. The season starts, an injury happens here and there, then Jihad gets added to the 53 or whatever. But I just think he'd be a really smart addition, because you can add him to the interior defensive line group, you can add him to the edge group, he can play both places, and in the meantime you can just stash him on the practice squad. And again, if somebody wants to sign him off of our practice squad to put on their 53, fine. But it's like, why weren't they signing him now? So I don't see that happening. And then I just have a couple of notes here that I think will probably end up signing a veteran tight end jag, just a guy, kind of like we did Robert Tonyan last year, right? And then just kind of a veteran free agents safety jag, like a Bobby McCain. So I don't know which guy that would actually be, but it'll be a guy like a Robert Tonyan and like a Bobby McCain. And these will be veterans that we're going to stash onto our practice squad and then call them up when we need them. Okay, so then I just had some guys that I had at the bottom of my own 1.0 draft, like a Joshua Gray, who's an offensive lineman, a Nazir Stackhouse, who's a defensive tackle, a Caleb Ransaw, who is a defensive back, who can play like both corner and safety, I believe. And then just some guys from last year, Henry Bird. I got to be honest with you, the practice squad, as it currently stands, doesn't really do much for me. I'm looking forward to getting some veteran additions, some draftees, some undrafted free agents to help spruce this group up a little bit, because after the guys that we lost last year, it really left us kind of void of any real discernible talent on the practice squad. So Henry Bird, he's an offensive line. Offensive lineman. Trevor Reed's an offensive lineman. You got Lucky and Thayer. This might be their last chance, I think, to try and make the squad. We'll see what they can do in the offseason. Travis Bell's a defensive lineman. Asamoah, I've got him landing on the practice squad after losing out in the battle with the rookie. Ambry Thomas is a veteran corner we signed at some point last year. Bubba Bolden, of course, was a name that came out during free agency where people were like, "Who's that?" He could be probably like a specialty, a practice squad guy who maybe comes up and plays special teams. In fact, that could be the Bobby McCain-like signing, actually, now that I think about it. But we'll see how that plays out. And then, of course, your 17th spot is just an international guy like a Samis Reyes. I don't know if he's going to be back this year or not. I'm not really sure how that works. I don't know if they stay 1 year and move on or do multiple years, but we'll see. And then I just have a list of undrafted free agent guys that I'm kind of personally looking at over here. So just guys of note that are gone. Nahshon Wright's already gone, so I called that one. I think that Jay Ward is gone. It's another guy that I defended quite a bit. I thought that maybe he got a bad rap his first year on special teams with a couple of untimely penalties, but I thought that he was going to be a lot better. He really wasn't. When I went back and watched the games and I saw him playing gunner, I was very unimpressed. So I think it's time to move on from him. I'd rather have Jeff Okudah than Jay Ward in that defensive backfield. There's no way he's beating out McLeather or Najee Thompson. He just does not offer enough upside and enough special teams, juice as those other guys. And then, of course, Ryan Wright, I have as a guy that I think will be gone because I think he's going to lose the punt battle to whoever. I'm not sure who it'll be. And I just wanted to kind of go over who we lost last year. Andre Carter, I liked him. He got signed away by the Raiders. I was kind of bummed about that one. Dallas Gant, we actually just let him go. I'm telling you, that guy outplayed Brian Asamoah, both on the field and on special teams. I think maybe the coaching staff just wanted to give Brian one more year, and they let Dallas go, and he ended up going to Philly. So that one bummed me out because I really liked what I saw out of Dallas Gant in the preseason. So anyway, Nick Muse, as you know, he got signed away by the Eagles. A couple of guys got rings over there. Tristan Jackson, I was kind of a fan of his, and then I saw him play in the preseason and saw that he literally could not block, and I think that his role was going to be that kind of like maybe big slot guy who then also helps in run blocking. And when I saw how poorly he blocked, I thought, oh, that's why he's not making the 53. And so he got signed away by Arizona. He's already kind of getting up there in football age, so that one didn't really shock me. And then the one that really pissed me off the most was when the Patriots signed away Tyrese Robinson. I thought personally, even though I defended Ed Ingram quite a bit last year, I thought Tyrese Robinson showed enough in the preseason to at least challenge Ed. And this was before I think they signed Reisner, or maybe not, right? But Reisner was on IR. And I thought, man, Tyrese has shown a lot. I think he could really challenge Ed for that starting spot at right guard. But the Vikings didn't agree, and they cut him on final cut downs, and then they signed him back to the practice squad. But the Patriots got the better of us, and I actually saw he started the last game of the year against the Bills, and I think the Bills were sitting a lot of guys, but still his grade in that one game looked really, really good. So I don't know, the Patriots might have stolen a pretty good one away from us in Tyrese. I'm really, really sad to have seen him gone. So just to come over here to my note, which was, potential practice squad guys. Jihad Ward, a Jag like Tunyon, a Jag like McCain, which could be Bubba Bolden. I don't know. We'll see how that all shakes out. So anyway, there's your deep dive on the roster. I mean, I went through it all, right? I gave you the depth chart. I gave you the full 53 with the special teams, the practice squad, guys we lost last year, guys who I think will be active, and threw in potential veterans and draftees and things. So we really did a deep dive on that. So let's take a look at the special teams. All right. So you have 6 brackets, I guess you could say, for special teams. Okay, and that is your field goal block team, your field goal / extra point block team, your field goal extra point kick team. You have your kick cover team, your punt cover team, your kick return team, your punt return team. Now, when you talk about core 4, you're talking about coverage and return units. You're not talking about the field goal block and kick teams. That's why I have all of that X'd out, because it's like I put in names there, but I really don't care about talking about that. So what I do want to talk about are the coverage teams and the return teams. And I put in all of the names that I think will be the most likely players to fill this out. So if you just take a look, if a guy got a grade in the 90s, I marked it in blue, such as right here. There actually weren't any grades that came out in the 80s. It's really, really hard to get a really high grade on special teams based on the way that PFF does it. They, number one, do not separate out all of the different special teams units. Like, they won't give a grade like, okay, he did such and such as a kick coverage, and then he did such and such in punt return. They just lump all the grades in together, so you really don't know which guys are great at what and what their necessary role was, like, gunner or whatever. So you just have to kind of throw the grade in there and just hope that it means something, right? I mean, it's all we have to go by, really. So if you were in the 70s, I put you in kind of there are a couple 80s in here now, I see them. So 80s are in dark green, 70s are in kind of medium green, 60s are in light green, and then 50s are in yellow, and then anything like 50 or below was like orange. And if there was anything super low at 30s, I would have put red, but nobody hit the 30s, so that's fortunate. So if you just look here, you see Tavier Thomas hit a 90.5 last year in 111 snaps on special teams. And I've got him projected right now playing all four. So, and that was a huge jump. So another thing to remember about PFF's grading is that 60 is the baseline. Okay, so if you're above 60, that means they considered you above average. And if you're below, you're a little bit below average. So as you can see in 23, Tavier Thomas was in the 50s, which they had him below average, but he played a lot fewer snaps, and he might have even been injured. So if you look at his snap counts here, he's got 34 here, right? 11 here, 32 here, 24 here. Then you look at his 24 snaps, and they jumped up big time. 111, 52, 59, 93. And look at that grade, 90.5. He is an excellent special teamer. He's going to be maybe not the ace of the group, but he'll be one of them. Okay, so then just look at all these greens, right? Look at Theo Jackson, Najee Thompson, Josh Metellus, Ivan Pace, Eric Wilson, C.J. Ham, Brian Asamoah, Bo Richter, even Tim Jones, not last year, but the year before hit green, right? He didn't have a very good year last year. But then, so you take all that, you see a lot of guys who play well above average. You see very few who don't. And then you couple that with the number of snaps they were playing, which is almost all of them. So they're highly experienced and they grade out well. So you put all that together, and then you couple that with, I believe our special teams coach, his name is Matt Daniels. You can correct me on that if I'm wrong. I know it's Coach Daniels. We're going to see what he has. So far, just based on the way that the special teams has played overall, and I know it wasn't his fault until he got a consistent kicker in, and Ryan Wright has been kind of mediocre. But the coverage and return teams have not really been good, and I think that it could be the players, but I think it also points to coaching. There seems to be a lot more miscues than there should be, and so what I'm saying about Coach Daniels is this. If he can't coach up an elite special teams with this group, then maybe it's him. Because this group should be a top 5 special teams group. And then you combine your coverage and your return teams, you combine that with what appears to be a great kicker. We're going to try and improve the punting spot. And then, of course, we have a really reliable long snapper. Our special team should be a top 5 unit this year, and it should lead to our team taking close games and turning them into blowout wins. Excuse me. Got a little bit of a throat tickle tonight. Sorry about that. Okay, so that covers special teams. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to pull up the mock draft I did on PFF, which is actually pretty hilarious because they graded me out really bad. Okay, here it is. Let me pull it up over here so I can look at it. All right, 40 minutes in, guys. Okay, so the draft that I did is this. I traded down with Seattle. I had to force the trade because they just weren't into it. But this is the trade that based on my own charts is fair. And it was something I wanted to do because I'm not really interested right now in looking at the first round. I'm more interested in looking at the second round and beyond. So I traded out from 24. I gave the Seahawks 24, and I also gave them 97. And I'm sorry. I also picked up 50, 52, and 92. Okay, so that was the trade. So here's what I did with those picks. At 50, I picked Darian Porter, the cornerback out of Iowa State. At 52, I picked Trevion Henderson, the halfback out of Ohio State. I did another trade down. I traded out from 92, and I picked up 107 and 194 from the Jags. That one I didn't have to force. They accepted it. So then at 107, I took tight end Gunnar Helm out of Texas. At 156, I took linebacker Danny Stutzman out of Oklahoma. I did another trade back with the Steelers. I traded out of 139 and I picked up 156 and 229. So then at 187, I drafted Caleb Ransaw, the defensive back. He's listed here as a safety. I think he played corner in college. Maybe he played a little bit of both, but he's projecting as a safety in college. He's kind of a multi-purpose guy, though, or in the pros, I mean. He's kind of a multi-purpose guy, kind of like a Metellus. 194, I picked Nazir Stackhouse out of Georgia, the defensive lineman. And then with my last pick at 229, I picked the guard Joshua Gray out of Oregon State. Now, as you can see clearly, PFF hated this draft. They gave me a B for Porter because they had him as their 58th ranked prospect. They gave me a C for Henderson because they had him at 70, a C minus for Helm because they had him at 116, a D for Stutzman because they had him at 179, a B plus for Ransaw because they had him at 190, a D for Stackhouse because they had him at 295. And some of these rankings may have changed since then. I don't know. I did this mock draft back on the, March the 22nd, so it's been about 3 weeks. So I know things change over time. And then Joshua Gray they had at 248, and I drafted him at 229. Now, as you can see, PFF, every single draft pick I made, the guy that I took was ranked lower by their system. Here's the thing about PFF. They have a lot of self-belief in their systems, okay? So they have a lot of hubris. So when they are grading the draft that you're using on their draft simulator, they're going to use their rankings. They're going to use which positions they think are most important, and they're going to grade you based on that. And so I ended up getting a C+, and it was actually a bottom 9% of all drafts done for the Vikings among all Vikings fans or whoever, which I think is hilarious. Now here's the thing: I don't care about sticking to PFF's draft board. That's not what I was doing. I was sticking to kind of an amalgamation, right? Like a what do you call it? A consolidation. Like a mock draft database and that kind of thing, or like the thing that Arif Hassan comes out with on Wide Left, that kind of thing, where they literally take all of the different big boards, they put them all together, and they come out with one big list. So I was looking more at that. So what I came out with, let's go back to the spreadsheet here and pull it back up. Pull it back up for myself. Let's slide over. Okay. My big board looked way different. So if you just kind of look down here real quick, actually you cannot see that, so because I am in the way. Let's pull that. There we go. So I did the mock on March the 22nd. So I added up, what I basically did was I added up the pick total, right? So it's like if I drafted a guy at 50 and 58 and then 107 and 166. I just added up all those numbers, right? So my pick total came out to 975. PFF's total, right, all of their rankings came out to 1,154. So clearly that's why they had my draft at a C+. Whereas when I look at the mock draft database total, the same guys I drafted came out to 848. And again, NFL.com, they actually don't do a big board. They just literally give every single guy a point value. What I did was I sorted their entire list by point values, and then I just went right down the list. And when I got to a guy that I drafted, I'm like, okay, that's like their 40th guy on the list or their 100th guy on the list or whatever. And so what I came out to with NFL.com was that the pick total came out to 812. So based on mock draft database and NFL.com, that was a home run draft, okay? I got those guys at way better spots than where they had them ranked. So in my view, that's a success. Okay, so let's just kind of go back and look at the guys that I drafted. So right off the bat, we've got Trevion Henderson, and this is my big board right now, and I've only got like 45 guys on it because I'm not going to sit there and kind of do a deep dive on like every single guy. And I'm not any kind of like draft analyst. I kind of like pick and choose where I grab my information and kind of make a, as good of an assessment on each player as I can, and think about how he fits in with our team and kind of go from there. So there's at this time, and I'm going to add more the closer we get to the draft, and I'll do more mock drafts and things like that. These 45 guys were guys that really piqued my interest right off the bat. And so number one on my list is Travion Henderson. And all of these notes I actually pulled off of NFL.com. This is his draft profile. These are all notes that are written up by Zerline. They're like lead draft analyst. Okay, Zerline says he comps to Aaron Jones. He is the best pass protector in the draft, and he operates as a Jahmyr Gibbs light in an offense looking for dynamic playmaking. Well, that sounds really good. Sign me up for that. That sounds like a great fit for our team. So just again, kind of pointing out, so PFF had him as their 70th ranked prospect. Mock Draft Database had him as their 48th. NFL.com had him as their 29th. I drafted him at 52. So as you can see, I didn't overdraft him according to Mock Draft Database or NFL.com, but according to PFF, I did. Okay. So then the next guy I drafted was Darian Porter, cornerback. And you just see my little notes here, like the round that I would expect a guy like this to be drafted in would be like middle of the second, and then I put the NFL.com grade in there. So I drafted Porter at 50. PFF had him at 59. Mock Draft Database actually had him at 62, and NFL.com actually had him at 104. So this one was kind of a reach, but I really, really love the write-up on him. And here it is right here. So it says, elite traits, excellent zone awareness, lots of reps, athletic profile, and instant impact on special teams. Projects to have continued ascension. That sounds great for the kind of cornerback room that we're trying to build with a lot of young guys kind of on the rise. I think that this guy would be a perfect fit into our cornerback room. All right, next up, we have Gunnar Helm, the tight end from Texas. Projected kind of an end of the third guy. He has a 6.13 grade on NFL.com. I picked him at 107. PFF had him at 114, but Mock Draft Database had him at 97. And then NFL.com had him at 145. But again, here's the write-up on Gunnar Helm. A combo tight end with size and hands. QB friendly. Feel for space. Opportunistic sticks mover. Projects as a future tight end 2 with 3-down potential. I talked about in a few episodes ago, and I even put out some shorter clips about it. I have a feeling Josh Oliver's going to move on from the Vikings. I think this is going to be his last year with the team, and I think he's going to price himself out as our. He's going to be looking for tight end 1 money. I think for kind of like the one last big contract of his career. He's going to price himself out. We're not going to be able to afford him. We're going to need a guy like a Gunnar Helm to step into that tight end 2 role behind Hawkinson beyond this next year. Okay, next up we have Danny Stutzman, probably my favorite guy so far. Really excited at an opportunity to get him. We'll see. So Danny Stutzman, he's an inside linebacker, projected around the end of the 4th round. He's a 6.24 NFL.com grade. And basically, these grades, if you're like a 6.1 to 6.0 or maybe even down to 5.9, they're like, yeah, okay, you could be a good starter, kind of backup, kind of like roster filler. If you're above 6.1, they're like, okay, you've got starter potential, you've got, this, that. You might have the goods to really make a name for yourself in the NFL. So if you see something above like a 6.1 to 6.2, you're looking at a guy who has potential, like high-end potential. I got him at 156. Again, PFF had him lower. Mock Draft Database had him at 130, and NFL.com loves him. They had him at 84. So here's what they say about Stutzman, and that is size and instincts, football smart, play recognition, stays a step ahead, slips off blockers, efficient near the line of scrimmage, special teams talent, starter potential. That is exactly what I'm looking for from an interior linebacker. One of the things I used to complain about so much in terms of Brian Cashman last year was that he is not good at slipping off of blocks. He will just take on blockers and let guys run right past him. And I'm like, what are you doing, man? Like, you need to tackle him. You're the guy who's supposed to be making the tackle, not taking on blockers. So when I see a note like that, slips off blockers, that immediately piques my interest. Okay, moving on to the next guy I drafted, which was Caleb Bransaw, the Tulane cornerback. I have him somewhere in the top of the 6th round, graded out at 6.19 by NFL.com. I picked him at 87. Mock Draft Database has him at 148. NFL.com has him at 102. So again, they had him much higher rated than PFF. Here's his write-up. NFL demeanor, size, and strength. Terrific nickel and run support. Capable in zone. Possible move to safety. Pro ready. Scheme sets ceiling. So I don't know if he's a scheme fit or not, but I would say that if Brian Flores thinks he is, then I think a guy like this would be a perfect fit for us. I mean, a lot of these guys, I honestly look when they say things like, pro ready and he uses these accolades like terrific and capable and stuff like that. I'm like, I think there are times when it comes to Zierlein, sometimes when he's writing up these draft profiles, you can kind of tell when he's kind of struggling to really compliment a guy, but he's doing his best because he doesn't want to hurt the guy's stock by saying too much. And then there are times when you can really tell when he really loves a guy and can't say enough about him. And that kind of really resonates with me when I read some of these write-ups that he does. I'm like, okay, these guys that he's like kind of gushing over, those are the guys I really want to pay attention to. Okay, next up we have Joshua Gray, offensive guard out of Oregon State. Projected around the end of the 6th round, 6.10. I picked him at 229. Mock Draft Database and NFL.com have him higher, 164, 163, even though PFF hated the pick. Here's more great accolades, right? Team captain, tough, durable, smart. He switched from left tackle to left guard in 24. He's capable. He's point of attack. He has point of attack strength. He fits into all run schemes, and he's a coach's favorite. That's the kind of guy I want on my team. I love that kind of stuff. And then I think this is my last pick of the draft. Yeah. So at pick 190, whoops, went a little bit too far there. Okay, at pick 194, I picked Nazir Stackhouse, which I actually saw we had him in as a top 30 visit, the defensive tackle out of Georgia, and he's a big guy. He's a true nose. So he graded out at 6.00 because he's really just a run defense guy. He doesn't really offer a lot in terms of pass rush. But I picked him at 194. PFF had him 100 spots lower than that, but Mock Draft Database and NFL.com had him right in that range, which is where I took him. And then just right here, good strength, block eater, hard to move out of the hole, powerful, big, strong guy who has draft value versus the run. So that's the kind of guy I'm looking to add to this defensive line, If maybe Taimani doesn't develop the way we think he does, or maybe, Phillips ends up falling off the age cliff or ends up leaving or whatever the case may be, or getting injured, then I would love to have a guy like a Stackhouse to pair with Taimani and to rotate those guys in the middle, and then just let all the other guys go do their thing. For now it's going to be Allen and Hargrave, and then it'll be LDR and Redmond, and they can just go and do their thing, and these guys will eat blocks. So that's my mock draft, and again, I thought it was good. PFF hated it. They gave me a C+. They said it was in the last 9th percentile of all Vikings drafts. But hey, I'm not going off of what PFF tells me to do. I'm not just going to draft a guy because PFF has him graded high. I've got my own reasons for drafting guys. I've got my own big board, as it were. And I've got my own positional fits and things of that nature. So, oh yeah, and I did want to talk about, okay, I've gone on the big board. I just want to talk about the positional priority, and I'm going to tell you how I got to that number. And then this little note here I made about BRC. I just abbreviated what I said was best round cluster. So when I was looking at Mock Draft Database, I kind of was just looking at the rankings, and I wanted to see where maybe they had about 5 or 6 guys all kind of clustered within 32 picks of each other, and where it would be kind of the most opportunistic place to draft a guy from one of these positions. So inside linebacker, it looks like the 5th round is the best place to get them. Halfbacks, the 4th round. Tight ends, the 3rd or the 4th round. Punters, obviously, 7th round / UDFA. Safeties, anywhere from the 4th to the 6th. Defensive linemen, anywhere from the 4th to the 6th. Wide receivers, the 2nd, the 3rd, and the 6th. Interior offensive linemen, the 5th and the 6th. And then cornerbacks, the 2nd, the 4th, and the 6th. These were all areas where these particular position groups had really good clusters of players that you could really go after. And so that's why I'm honestly such a big proponent for the trade down. I really, really hope that Kwesi is able to call in a favor and get out of that 24th pick, because I think there's a lot of opportunity to grab a lot of really good players. I heard it somewhere, and I don't remember whose quote it is, but although this may not be a draft with a lot of stars in it, it has a lot of starter-worthy players in it. So it's a deep draft in terms of like really filling out a solid roster. And so that's why I think it's super important to trade down multiple times and gain hopefully as many as 7 picks, maybe even more, but we'll see what Kwesi does. As always, it'll always feel like he has a draft class of like 15, because he's going to go so strong on the undrafted free agent class. So even if we only end up with maybe like 6 picks, just know that means that Kwesi and the team are going hard after the UDFA class. Okay, so just one, I wanted to make one note about Kwesi and his draft strategy. And that is, we have seen all 3 different strategies by him in his first 3 years, right? Year 1, it was the trade down. Year 2, it was the stick and pick. And then year 3, it was the trade up. So you don't really know what you're going to get out of him. And I think that's a really great plan on his part to kind of keep you guessing. He can literally play this. He's not like Rick Spielman, where you kind of understood Rick had a way about him. He was going to trade down. He was going to gather late round picks and take flyers on guys. With Kwesi, you never really know. I mean, shoot, I wrote an article on Substack, and go check it out if you haven't, about Kwesi going back to the well with teams that he's worked with in the past. He's done it 7 times. He's traded with 15 different teams, whether it be the draft or in the middle of the season or in the off season. He has traded with 15 teams in the league, which is 15 out of 31, which is about half. And he's gone back to that same team, either to make a move for himself or to have that team come back and make a move with him 7 of those 15 times, which means clearly there's a payback system going on. And so of all the teams that I think, if he ends up, I mean, if there's a guy they really truly love, like a Kenneth Grant or something like that, or one of those cornerbacks, or the safeties, right? The Malachi Starks and the Emin Juarez, guys like that. If there's a guy they really, really love that they have pegged as like a top 10 guy and he's fallen down to like 23, that's where the Packers are drafting. And I think of all the teams above the Vikings, I think the Packers are the one team that the Vikings could actually trade up with, because they do somewhat owe us a favor after that draft day trade in 2022 when they went up to get Christian Watson. So just remember that I said that, because that is really the only potential of a trade up, in my opinion, in the first round. And the stick and pick, I would say, if you had to ask me to put a percentage on it, feels like maybe 25%, depends on what players there. But if there's a handful of guys they have all ranked all in the same area, like maybe like 5 guys, I would see no reason why they wouldn't trade back at least a few spots to see, hey, if we can still land one of these guys and we like all of them, and then we can gain more capital later in the draft. So yeah. Oh, and then there was another thing that really struck me, and this was when I was watching the NFL draft video that they put out last year, was that when they would catch Kwesi talking about the picks that were coming at the end of the draft, he wasn't talking about them in terms of like options. Like, he wasn't saying, hey, when that 5th round pick comes around or that 6th round pick comes around, let's think about this position or this handful of guys or whatever. He was literally naming guys off, except Reichert. He just called him the kicker. But he was naming guys off specifically. He's like, well, let's take Juergens in the 5th. And then when they didn't, they're like, well, we can still take Juergens in the 6th. And I think they mentioned Rodriguez by name. And so what I gathered from that was that they don't really compile like I don't think a huge list of guys. I think they have a really narrowed list of guys they really love, and they kind of like spend the most attention on them. And we'll never know who they are, but they know who they are. And then when they're left with, maybe that handful of guys at the end, they're like, okay, here are the guys that we want to draft here at the end, and then here are the guys we want to target in undrafted free agency, so let's get on the phones now. So I think that's really smart, because I think with the way Rick did it, where he just kind of got a bunch of picks at the end of the draft and just started like throwing darts at guys, I think the Vikings really know what they want. And so I really like that philosophy, and I think so far it's working out really well. So I would say look for that to happen again, where It might be. I remember last year when they drafted Jurgens and Reichard and Levi Drake Rodriguez. Those were head scratchers because we were like, these aren't the guys that are on top of the compilation boards. You know, like Kuiper's best available and all that kind of stuff. These aren't the names that I was expecting. Why aren't they getting this guy or that guy? It's like, well, because he's not even on the Vikings' radar. They liked Reichard. They liked Jurgens. They liked Levi Drake Rodriguez. Those were the guys they wanted. So it's an interesting philosophy to me, and I kind of like it because they know what they want. It just shows a really straight, strong, isolated vision, and I think that can go a really long way. So yeah. So anyway, big fan of that. Okay, so moving on. We talked the draft strategy. Now I wanted to talk to you about my positional priority, which you probably noticed over here. And you're like, how did he come to these conclusions? Well, I'm going to show you how I did. And this is actually a pretty simplistic chart that I put together, but I wanted to put something together to kind of explain why I felt like we should go after certain positions in the draft more so than others, right? Because if you, I like having a process with everything I do. I don't like just like throwing darts and just kind of being willy-nilly and being like, I don't know, well, how's the cornerback room look? Let's go after a corner. Or we could use a wide receiver 3. Let's go after a receiver. I came up with like a specific chart, which again, it's very simplistic. I'm not saying this is some kind of groundbreaking thing, but it really helped me come up with a way of kind of identifying where to draft certain positions, right? Where to identify. In addition to kind of taking into account what I thought of as like the best round clusters for each position. So over here, I ranked all 10 of our position groups and I gave them a value, right? So you've got quarterback number 1, I have tackle and edge number 2, corner 3, receiver 4, both sides of the interior line 5, running back 6, interior linebackers 7, tight ends 8, safeties 9, and then just any kind of special teamer 10. And then I gave that a value. And then I looked at depth slot. Okay, so if you're looking at drafting a guy and putting him into your depth chart at number 1 through number 5, well, then I put a value on that. And then I just kind of looked at current player issues, right? So these are guys who are already on the roster. So a guy that you're looking to add into a certain player group, the players that currently exist there, do they have any issues? Like, such as, are they over 30? Do they have an expiring contract? Have they had any injuries this year or in years past? So I put 3, 6, 9. So I'm saying, did they miss up to 3 games last year, or 6 within the last 2 years, or 9 within the last 3 years? And I put a value on that. Is there minimal roster competition? And what I mean by that is, like when Stutzman comes in to compete against Asamoah, I don't consider that a high-end roster competition. But say, for instance, if you're bringing in a punter to go up against Ryan Wright, well, that's going to be serious roster competition. So I would consider that. If there's minimal competition, like for a Stutzman, I consider that a mark in his favor. And then finally, is there a non-threat of a veteran free agent being added to the roster? So that did not apply in terms of cornerback or receiver, because I do think there's a threat of an addition via free agency there. Somebody who you think, okay, this person's making the 53, and not like a practice squad guy, like a Jihad Ward or something. So I took all these values, right? I took all these different variables. I added them all up. I divided them down in my own way, and I came up with this. So, and again, people are going to disagree with me. I know they're going to disagree with me, because all of the talk, and this is one thing that really makes draft season really drag out for me, is because all people really talk about are the first rounders. And I just get so tired of hearing the same 10 names over and over and over again. And I'm like, dude, I'm way more interested in days 2 and 3, which actually reminds me, if you are watching this, I am going to be live on days 2 and 3 of the draft. So please come spend time with me, get into my comment section, and we'll chat it up and have a good time. Okay, so here's where I came out. These were my results, okay? I think the most important position, and again, I'm not saying this is the order you draft them in. I'm just saying this is where I think the importance lies in terms of filling each roster spot. I think inside linebacker 4 is the most important spot because I think the Asamoah can be highly improved upon. I think running back 3 is very important behind Mason and Jones. I mean, you look at it, Jones gets dinged up, right? He needs to have his carries reduced. And Mason's a really violent runner. I mean, he's susceptible to injuries himself. And Jones is over 30, and then there's nobody else behind them. They don't trust Chandler. So running back 3 is important. Tight end 3 is important. There's literally no tight end 3 right now. Punter, I actually have kind of high because I think that Ryan Wright is replaceable. Safety 4, I do see as a little bit important, even though I really don't have any. I'm not looking to kick Tavier Thomas off my team. I want him in there to play special teams. But I just think it's important to at least bring someone who can then be on your practice squad because you want someone developed there. Because you've got Harrison Smith probably in his last year. You don't really know what you have in Theo Jackson. We have to re-sign Josh Metellus. So the safety room is kind of in flux right now. Like, obviously we're cool for this year, but beyond that, we don't really know. So we need to develop a guy. All right, so we've got interior defensive linemen 5 through 7. I didn't really know, beyond, say, like a Taki Taimani, like where he kind of lands with Redmond or LDR. I'm not really sure. So, but that's, again, I have Stackhouse in that spot. That's a guy that I think we're eventually going to need somebody. Then I have wide receiver 4 through 6. Again, I don't know where he's going to land. You've got Rondale Moore. You've got Tim Jones, maybe a veteran. I'm not sure. I don't really have receiver as a very high priority right now, even though I know it looks the way it does. But I just think that a veteran's going to be added. Of course, you have Jefferson and Addison for right now. Naylor's going into the final year of his contract, and then you don't know what you have in Moore. So that's a room in flux as well. But as it stands right now, I didn't really have it as a super high priority in terms of the draft anyway. Okay, and then we have interior offensive line. I have them pretty low, anywhere from 4 to 6, landing in the depth chart behind your 3 starters and maybe a guy like a Rouse or a Juergens. And then finally, cornerback, I have, oddly enough, last. And I think it's because with the way that my priority chart came out, the way all the numbers came out, was that the first 3 guys, even though Isaiah Rodgers and Mekhi Blackmon are kind of unknowns right now, all 3 guys ahead of him, and you could even throw McGlothern into this list. Again, I get that he's an unknown, but if you look at Murphy, Rodgers, Blackmon, McGlothern, all 4 of those guys are young and signed for multiple years. Now, you do have a little bit of injury concern, but ACLs they're so random. You know what I mean? I'm not going to hold that against Blackmon. So I think the reason why I have cornerback 4/5 so low is because I think we're in really good shape. I think we're in better shape than people realize. So I know that it feels like everyone is mocking corner to us in the first round. I got to tell you, I'm thinking the opposite. I'm not really seeing it. And I honestly do believe because corner came out so low on my priority list, it kind of feels like it is pointing to an Asante Samuel signing. And if they sign another relatively young corner for multiple years, that room is going to be really robust for a while. And there's really not going to be a huge need. I mean, we'll see how they perform, but I've got high hopes. So that takes care of that. I just want to look at trade partners real quick. Oh, yeah. And that I pulled up another copy of that just in case I wanted to readdress it, but I covered everything there. So then I just wanted to look at potential trade partners, and we're at an hour 8, so we're going to go a little bit long. But here are some teams that I have as our potential trade partners. Okay, now again, if you go read my Substack article, you'll see that I have 4 teams identified that I think that owe us a little bit of a payback for past trades, and that is Green Bay, Philadelphia, Kansas City, and Seattle. Seattle is the team, again, on my mock draft. I forced that trade with them, and we dropped all the way down to 50, but we picked up 52 and 92, giving up 24 and 97. So as you can see, I note there that that's the one I targeted in my mock. So Green Bay is the only team that we could potentially trade up with. They're 1 pick ahead of us. And then Philly and KC, as you know, are 31 and 32 in the first round. And so I see them as potential trade partners. The reason why I didn't include them over here was because when I looked at the draft picks that they had, nothing was really matching up for me in terms of my draft value chart. So I did identify, what do we got here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, not including Seattle. I have 7 teams who are good trade down candidates that I felt like when I and I didn't really, I'm not going to play those like weird pick swaps with like fifths and sixths and sevenths, and I'm not going to do these weird trades that they will do in reality. But I'm not going to sit here and do all that math. I'm just doing very simplistic trades. So I've got Baltimore here at 27. We could move back to 27 and pick up 91 for our 24. Or how about Cleveland? We could move to the first pick in the second round at 33. Pick up 67 and move back just a little to 104. We can give up 24 and 97. You've got Houston at 25, so you're moving back literally one spot. But you could pick up 58 and give up 24 and 97. So now you got a pick in the second round. Maybe you could move back again and you can get multiple day 2 picks, right? Jacksonville at 36, 70, and 88. We give up 24 and 97. I really love that one. You got the Rams at 26 and 101. We give up 24. You only move back 2 spots. And you're getting, I believe, right at the tail end of day 3 or of round 3, I think, for that 101. Or how about New England? Picks 38, 69, and 77. We give up 24 and 97. Now suddenly you have 3 picks on day 2, right? And then finally the Giants, you would fall down to 34, but you would get picks 65 and 105, and you would trade out of 24 and then also give up 97. So according to my value chart, all of these trades made sense, and these are all trade partners I think that we could be looking at for trade downs, depending on whether or not they want to move up. And because I believe we all know that Tennessee's taking Cam Ward, and if, somebody could surprise, right? You have players like, who are we talking about? Shedeur Sanders, Jalen Milroe, Jackson Dart. These are guys who, there's all this stuff floating around. Quarterbacks are always so quirky in the draft. They could go in the top 10 or they could fall out of the first round. We don't really know. And so I love seeing teams like Cleveland and like the Giants, QB needy teams on this list of trade down partners, because they'd be a perfect candidate if a quarterback's falling down the board and it gets to pick 24. And then there we are, in a prime spot for someone to trade up to get their quarterback. Then we get more picks and more capital and all that. So that takes care of the trade partners. Now, the only thing I had left, this is just my own personal, I don't even know if you can read that. It's so small. This is my own personal trade value chart, draft day trade value chart. And here's the thing I want to say about that. I get sick and tired every single draft of people looking at the values on the Jimmy Johnson chart or the Rich Hill chart or the Fitzgerald Spielberger chart, right? So the Fitzgerald Spielberger chart, that is the one that Over the Cap uses, and I like Over the Cap quite a bit. I love their website, but that one's just too nice to the trade down team. They make every trade down look really great for the trade down team, and it has to be a little bit more critical of those teams. The trade up, they got to even their numbers out there. So hopefully they've worked their numbers. The Rich Hill one is a little bit outdated. Again, they really hit teams that trade down, and so it's opposite, right? So the Fitzgerald Spielberger, they reward teams for trading down way more than they should. And then Rich Hill, and especially the Jimmy Johnson one, which has been around for like 40 years or something, really hit trade down people really hard. And so none of them really tell the whole story. So what I did was I went and I grabbed every single draft value chart that I could find on the net, right? I think I found like 7 different ones. And what I did is I put them all together and I weighted them out appropriately, and I came out with my own numbers. So I have my own value chart that when I look at trades, I do it according to my own value chart, because that's the way I do. I have a process for everything. And I work certain things in like this, like every single team that's trading down should be winning the trade. I really hate when trades get reported and people do all the points, right? And I think there's like this new system where they've got the Jimmy and they've got the Rich Hill and they've got the Fitzgerald Spielberger, and they got it all averaged out. I think there's one more that they throw in there. And they're like, oh, well, this team lost the trade. It's immediately just a negative criticism. You have lost the trade. Okay, if you're trading down, you should automatically be winning the trade regardless, because the team should be sending you something that entices you to trade down. So you should be winning the trade every single time when you're trading down and losing it when you trade up. That's how it works. If you want something, you have to overpay for it, okay? They're not just going to hand it over to you. So I just have my notes down here that if a team holds a pick between 1 and 10, they should be getting 25% beyond the simple value, the numbers, right? So it's like if you're adding the two numbers that are being traded for the pick that's higher, if they're coming out even, that means the team trading up won that trade, because the team trading back should be getting 25% of extra value on their pick, because the other one's actually moving out of the spot. So that's just what that note means. 25% if you have a top 10 pick, 20% if you have a first rounder, 11 to 32. You should be winning your trades by 15% in rounds 2 and 3. 10%, in rounds like 4, 5, maybe even 6, and then, maybe 5% in like the last round or two. So that's just the way it is. So I would implore people to stop paying so much attention to the Jimmy Johnson and the Rich Hill and the other charts, and caring and giving such a crap about what these point systems, because they're flawed. And it's like, at the very least, I've taken the time to try and like create something new that's a little bit more sophisticated and kind of like helps to explain it a little bit better and show the whole story. And then to also just accept the fact that if you're trading up, you're going to lose the trade. And if you're trading down, you're going to win the trade. That's the way transactions work. Okay. All right, man, I'm already in. You know what? This is going to be like an hour and a half, dude, because I still haven't talked about the, you know what? I'm going to save the schedule for another show. And I'll do a draft show as well. And I'll talk about some guys I'm really looking at for UDFAs. So let's just go into, and I know I spent the whole show on spreadsheets and stuff, and I'm sorry I did that, but let's just bring it back. Okay, let's transition back to me. Okay, so we are at like an hour 16. I just want to do some final thoughts, okay? And I touched on some of this on my last show, but basically it's this. The fan's blowing my paper a little bit. Okay, this is a renaissance. The golden age of Vikings football. We are a legitimate contender going forward, okay? I haven't felt this much confidence in this franchise in my entire 37 years, honestly. And I'm not kidding. I feel that confident about the direction this organization's going in. So it's top notch, top to bottom. I mean, we're talking about the facilities, the NFLPA grades, right? The ownership, the front office, the coaches, the players, everything is top notch. All of us deserve this. Okay. If you've been a fan, I mean, maybe you hopped on in the Randy Moss years. Maybe you hopped on in the Brett Favre year. Maybe you're kind of new. Maybe you've been around since the 70s and saw the Super Bowl losses. All I can say is we deserve this. We deserve all of the good things coming our way. And honestly, it's been a long time coming. So with that said, the mantra of the show is play vicious and be victorious. Peace. Thanks for watching the Regular Guy Vikings Hour. If you enjoyed this video, please interact with my content, such as liking, subscribing, or even commenting. And when you're done with that, come say hello to me over on my social media platforms. Thanks.